Cool. So first of all, welcome everyone to our 8th community event on announcing LocalStack 2.0 GA. And in this community event, we are going to discuss about LocalStack 2.0 and some of the new features, enhancements, and some of the new things that we have released out, like for our community, for our users and customers. So we have been like organizing these community events for almost a year and a half by now. And I believe like it has been almost 8 to 10 months since we released 1.0. So we have been shipping very rapidly. And we are quite excited to present to you like some of the new things that we have developed over the past few months. Awesome. So before we chime in, I just want all of you to know that we will be recording this entire event, and it will be available on our YouTube channel once this meetup is over. And till then, if you have got any questions, if you have got any concerns, please feel free to use our Google Meet chat, or else we will have a Slido alternative where you can put all your questions in, and we'll be more than happy to go over them and answer any of the queries or use cases you might have. So for today, Anka will be co-hosting alongside me. So for the past few meetups, you must have been just seeing my face and hearing my voice during these meetups. But today we will have Anka as well. So Anka, how do you feel organizing one of these meetups?
Hi, yes, a little nervous. It's my first time co-hosting, so I hope it goes well.
Yeah. Can everyone see me? I hope I'm not frozen right now. I look quite static most of the times, but I believe I should be okay now.
It's just your personality.
Yep, stone cold. Yep, cool. So let us jump ahead and let us get to see all who will be presenting today. So I will be hosting this community event alongside Anka. And apart from me, we will have the LocalStack founders who will be presenting various use cases, various new things that we have accomplished over the past 1 year, ever since we released LocalStack V1. And what are the new things that you might expect coming out of LocalStack in the upcoming months itself. So we'll have Gerda, who is our chief operating officer. We'll have Thomas, who is the head of engineering and one of the co-founders. And we have Waldemar, our chief technology officer, who will be presenting a lot of exciting stuff about LocalStack as well. So feel free to like meet them, feel free to reach out if you have got any questions regarding LocalStack. With that said, we will have a pretty strict agenda for this meetup, but it's pretty flexible as well. So please make yourself comfortable, and this would be quite a roller coaster at the end of the day. So Anka, would you like to introduce the agenda to our audience?
Yes, let's quickly go over the agenda. In the intersection, we will be pointing you to the Slido where you could ask any question you have during this presentation, followed by Gerta, who will be talking about the road to LocalStack 2.0. Then Valdemar and Thomas will be highlighting all the new features in LocalStack, and Harsh will be joining them afterwards for some cool demos, showcasing some new features in the new version. We will have a little stop around the community section where Harsh and I will be showcasing all the new ways that we can support our community now and in the future, and all the new resources that we have. During the closing section, we will quickly speak about what the future holds for LocalStack, and we will end in a classic way with the Q&A. So without further ado, let's just jump in. Harsh?
Awesome. Thanks a lot for rolling out the quick agenda points. So intro and welcome. Yes, we welcome all of you to this community meetup, and we'll be more than happy to have all your feedback, all your questions in. But before going over that, we have a very brief Slido session that we just want to quickly go through to better know about our audience. So most of these community events have kind of a pretty interesting mix-up. People who are already well acquainted with LocalStack, people who must have tried LocalStack, but it was almost 2 or 3 years back. They just heard about LocalStack, they came back quickly, they want to check out what the new updates are. Or there might be people who just don't know about LocalStack and they're just interested to see like how LocalStack is trying to change the game in local cloud development. So this Slido session won't take more than a couple of minutes, quite a promise. And with that said, you can join our Slido session by going to slido.com and just entering this particular code over there. Alternatively, you can just scan this particular QR code and you'll be more than ready to get started with the Slido session. So I'm just gonna wait for a minute for everyone to join in. And if you have not joined in yet and I'm just ready to start, please let me know so that I can wait for a few more seconds. and we just don't leave you on the platform.
I also posted the link in the chat, so you can just click on the link and you'll go into the Slido.
Awesome. Cool. So for people who are not familiar with Slido, it's basically a Q&A and a multiple choice question platform. Like, it has a lot more customization options after all. And we're going to use Slido for the Q&A part as well. So over on Slido, you can pretty much post these questions anonymously. So you don't need to feel that you're being judged for the questions that you're being asked. So feel free to spam all your questions in, everything that you have going on in your mind, or else you can use the Google Meet like chat as well, and you'll be more than happy to go over all of those questions at the end. Awesome. So I guess we can get started up. Is there anyone I'm leaving out, or is there anyone else who is yet to join? If no one is like being left out, please just drop a thumbs up on the Google Meet. I guess there are a lot more thumbs up here. Awesome. Let's get started. Yeah. Cool. The very first question is pretty simple, like what best describes your role? So are you coming from a cloud application development background? Are you managing an engineering team? Are you a student or an educator? Like, you can pretty much like post all your responses in over here. It's pretty much straightforward. Cool. So we have a few respondents. There are a lot many folks who are professional cloud application developers. There are a few folks who are managing an engineering team. There are a few folks who are learning about cloud development. Unfortunately, we don't see any students or educators. Like, we have so many exciting stuff that is lined out specifically for them. So it would be quite interesting to explore those avenues as well. For people who are learning cloud development, are you focusing entirely on AWS, or is there any other service that you're trying to use, like GCP or Azure? If there are anything like that, please put it on the chat. We'd be more than happy to know about them. Awesome. So there are 14 responses. Any more of that? Yeah, 15 of them. That's quite good. So we see that a lot of people are professional cloud application developers. That's quite good. That's particularly our niche area. Let's jump to the second question. And this would be like, did you have a chance to try out V2 features yet? Yes or no? I guess that's pretty simplistic. No. And I guess this is one of the core parts of this meetup. We want you to get acquainted with the V2 features. We want you to know, like, why is this so necessary for you to get upgraded to V2? And for people like who have tried out V2 features yet, we'll be more than happy to know like what features did you try out, because we have so many of them. Cool. So we don't see a lot more responses. So maybe we can jump to the final question without much ado. And this would be like, what is your experience with LocalStack? So as I said, like during these meetups, we have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds. We would just love to know like what's your experience with LocalStack overall, or maybe with AWS as well. I guess both are quite interchangeable, or like LocalStack just acts as a drop-in replacement for AWS. So yep. Cool. So there are a few folks whose whole team is using LocalStack professionally. Awesome. There are a few folks who are pretty new to LocalStack, or they have been using professionally. I guess that's pretty niche. That's pretty good. And with that said, I guess our Slido session is almost at an end. So thanks everyone for participating in. We have a definite idea of what our audience kind of looks like. And if you want to share any of your questions, any of the concerns, or any of the feedbacks that you might have, please keep your tab open on your mobile or maybe your laptop or whatever you are using to join this session. And make sure that you're using this to share across all the questions or all the concerns that you might have about LocalStack. If there are particular use cases that you're not so sure about, please feel free to put that in and we can just take them up at the end of the session. And with that said, our Slido session is at an end, and I would pass over the mic to Gerda, who will be talking a bit about what the road to LocalStack 2.0 kind of look like. So over to you, Gerda.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. Yeah, really excited to be here and to welcome everyone. It's been quite a ride, as we said. We've really been doing LocalStack for a while now, and it's been taking us almost 5 years and longer to get to V1. And now, obviously, the cadence is much higher for us to do releases going forward. So, Harsh, if you can go to the next slide. Just wanted to give a brief intro. I see that there are some people here who are rather new to LocalStack, so just so you know the history of the project, we really started already in 2017 in the open source. We had this idea for a problem that we had ourselves, and apparently we weren't the only ones that had that problem. So we gathered over 10,000 GitHub stars in only the first year. We're maintaining LocalStack really with the community as a side project until we saw the huge traction becoming more and more over the years. And we decided to really put all of our efforts into making this work for the entire organizations that were reaching out to us at the time. So we created the company in 2021. We had our first community meetup about a year ago in February 2022. The V1 release, which was a big thing for us, as I said, almost 5 years in kind of a pre-V1 project. Was in summer of last year, and since then we've been able to learn quite a lot from our customers, get a lot of feedback. So I just want to give a quick overview of the main learnings that we have had since V1 until the release of V2 this last month. So here, just a quick overview. So one thing to keep in mind is that we developed LocalStack obviously with the #1 main use case in mind, which is local development in your local development environments. So basically the main use case is that you have your application and you develop it initially on your local machine, and you're trying to emulate all of your AWS APIs locally. Then as you progress into the further stages in your CI environment, you can still use LocalStack until you get to the real cloud environment. Obviously, the main use case of this is cloud developers directly who are looking for faster feedback cycles, having really a better debugging experience, better reproducibility across the entire stack when developing and testing cloud applications. But that, as we learned, especially in the last few months since we released V1, is not the only use case for LocalStack. So we're seeing more and more also other evolving use cases, like, for example, use of LocalStack also in shared instances and remote dev environments, which really goes away from the use on your local machine, but really use in a cloud environment. So a good example here is Gitpod. We created a very good blog post together with them. If you're interested to read more about the topic in general, I'd recommend you have a look at that. But aside from Gitpod, which is a remote IDE that integrates very nicely with LocalStack as a sandbox environment, there are also other customers of ours who are really trying to build their own shared environments and powering them with LocalStack in the background. And another third use case here is again around learning platforms. So cloud development trainings and providers of, for example, security testing trainings and so on are now more and more leveraging LocalStack. And the main reason for that is really what we already offer in all those other cases that we discussed. So the general ephemeral nature of LocalStack that allows you to build a lot of reproducible test cases, allows you to precede a certain environment with a specific state, which is obviously also very, very helpful in this training setup. So it's really great to see how the main concepts around reproducibility, managing different environments, and really being able to replicate things are applicable actually outside of the main use case in so many other use cases as well. If we go to the next slide, one thing that I also wanted to highlight is what we released, especially in V1, and our main learnings around that. One of the main features there was the introduction of a new tier in our offering, which was the team tier, which came with our cloud pods that allow for collaborative debugging over the same application state. So the idea was that now you could take a snapshot of your current running instance, push that as a cloud pod into a remote storage and have it shared with your other team members, or even precede your CI/CD environments. And that's a use case that resonated a lot with our customer base. And we'll talk more about this now also with V2, that we also want to really make sure that more of our users can benefit off going forward. And another big learning for us was really the need of LocalStack across the entire CI/CD pipeline, and especially the cloud pods. We're seeing them more and more being leveraged also to pre-seed CI environments with a specific state to make sure that there are reproducible samples that are running in CI environments, which is really great to see. We go to the next slide. One more thing that I want to highlight is some partnerships that we've established recently. So we can officially announce that we have become a partner of Atomic Jar's test container modules, which is a new program that they recently just launched, where we really make sure that our integration that is available for the community of Atomic Jar is always up to date and really delivers value to the broader community. Test containers, as some of you may know, is a very popular way to integrate LocalStack into different application workflows, and we've really been partnering with them at Atomic Jar and test containers over the past few years, and very happy to have this official module now out. Another thing worthwhile to mention is our Docker extension. So we have released an official LocalStack Docker extension that is now available on Docker Hub. There is a great blog post about that where you can read all the details directly on the Docker blog. I've linked that as well here on the slide. So it's really amazing to see now that you can easily use the Docker extension to develop, manage, run cloud applications locally directly within Docker Desktop. If we go to the next slide, so now coming closer to the V2 release, we've had a lot of excitement in the entire community, a lot of people writing about the release. We're very, very proud to have Corey Quinn also featuring a couple of articles about us and about the release. He's been one of our kind of main critics in the past, has a very interesting and loud voice when it comes to anything around AWS development, and we're very honored to see him promote LocalStack now as something that he sees really worth looking into. Very much recommend you have a look at this post of his, where he created a couple of resources actually that you can all find in his last weeks in AWS. And as we can see, there's a lot of traction that's been generated just from that. So we have a manager at AWS Healthcare actually really talking about the benefit of LocalStack and how it can lower costs and really make it easier to deliver trainings to the entire team that he sees, especially in the healthcare sector, but obviously also through all other sectors. And we're also very happy to let you know that in one of our upcoming community events, we'd be more than happy to host Corey Quinn as one of our speakers here at one of the LocalStack community events. If we go to the last slide of mine, I just want to give a very brief overview before I hand it over to Valdemar and Thomas, who will walk you through the main features that we have developed here. But the main thing about LocalStack 2.0 is really that we try to listen to what your concerns were, what you wanted to see, and deliver that to you. So the three top areas are that we focused a lot on performance and performance improvements. We have a brand new Lambda and S3 provider, which lead to way faster deployments with LocalStack, especially using those services. We have separated the community and the pro image that also led to a tremendous reduction of the image size. And many more things. Another big thing is that we're really focusing on collaboration, as we already did with V1, but introducing that, as I said before, also to a broader audience. So there are ways now to make use of the base functionality of cloud-pods also for the community. And we've introduced our cloud-pods-launchpad, which is basically a way where you can include a launchpad badge into your repos and easily with one click share a specific pod with the wider community and have the wider community be able with basically one click to easily inject whatever you share with the community into their local stack running instances, which is really exciting. And the third topic, very quickly, we heard a lot from everyone that you're looking for more tutorials, you want to see more getting started guys. So we invested in our LocalStack developer hub that we just released as a first version, and we'll work a lot more on extending that one. A section around the developer hub will come later in the by Anka in this session. So yeah, very much looking forward to the demos that will come up, and handing it over to Valdemar now to give a in-depth overview of the exact features that come with V2.
Excellent. Thank you so much for setting the stage there, Gerda. So I'm very happy to give just a short overview of some of the things we've put out with the version 2. So as you can imagine, it's a huge list of changes, but just to summarize a few of the highlights that we think are just worth pointing out. So maybe Harsh, you can please go to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. So first of all, as already briefly mentioned, we've invested a lot in new service providers, so particularly around Lambda and S3. So those are really essentially re-implementations, much higher parity with AWS, better performance, things like provision concurrency, like really some very advanced features that are now in these providers available. So we're super excited and look forward to getting your feedback on those. We've reduced the image size through the split. That's actually something that Thomas will briefly touch upon also when it comes to upgrading to V2. So the Pro image is now completely separate from the community image. That had some technical reasons, but again, the nice side effect is also some optimizations we were able to build into that. The cloud pods for community users, we couldn't be more excited to get it out there into the open. As you could see in one of the previous slides, these badges that really link you easily to the launchpad. Actually, Harsh will show a short demo of this afterwards, so I don't want to give away too much at this stage. We've simplified some of the configuration, the Docker networking. So networking has kind of always traditionally been a bit of a challenge. Things are running locally. We have a DNS-based setup. We have the local host endpoints, but this has been sort of streamlined and simplified a lot in this last release. And then also around toolings, including a browser plugin and the Docker extension that was also briefly mentioned before. If we briefly switch to the Pro features, so here we invested a lot in a new snapshot persistence mechanism. So really sort of taking the learnings that we had from sort of the past feedback, and we've now a really much polished and a very solid foundation for persistence, which will also help us developing the CloudPods feature going forward. We have an entirely new mono container mode for the big data services. So those of you who may be familiar with things like Athena, EMR, Glue, I'll provide a short demo afterwards, so you'll see what this means, but it's basically much simplified now. We have the cloud-pods-launchpad, was already briefly mentioned, cross-service, IAM enforcement. Thomas will do a short demo on that later on. And last but not least, also lots of innovations and new features in the web application. So the resource browsers, we continue to invest in kind of the end-to-end experience, including also the graphical user interface. Okay, great. So with that said, just a brief summary. There's obviously much more. I'll recommend you take a look at also our launch blog post and more resources that we have. And with that, I'm handing over to Thomas for the upgrade path to V2.
Thomas, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now. Thanks a lot, Harsh, Valdemar, and Gerda for this nice setup. So I'll just briefly talk about the biggest breaking changes. We have a very extensive list on Discuss, and you can also go to the GitHub releases where you can find the same information of how to migrate individual configuration variables that we've simplified and changed. But the biggest thing to look out for is the split between the LocalStack Community and the LocalStack Pro image. As Valdemar mentioned, there are some technical reasons for doing that are not so interesting, but the nice side effect is that we now really have completely separation, so you really know what you're getting, and the community image is much smaller. And the LocalStack Pro image is also much smaller because we're now actually downloading all of the dependencies the first time you start LocalStack. So a lot of the services that very few people are actually using, require third-party dependencies, which were baked into the image. We now remove that, so they're really loaded on demand. This makes the image much, much smaller. So when you update the image, you're also downloading less. But this means that if you migrate from a 1-point-something version to a 2.0, and you're using LocalStack Pro, you will now need to use the LocalStack Pro image. There's a dedicated image for that, and we've been showing deprecation warnings over the past iterations of 1 point since 1.3. Pro will now quit if the key activation fails. So this has caused some confusion in the past. So we implemented this, which is a bit more strict now, but you will run into this perhaps if you're a Pro user and you switch to LocalStack Pro. You can disable this by setting Activate Pro to 0. That will give you the old behavior, so you can start using the Pro image. You can start it without the Pro features. As Waldemar mentioned, we've completely re-implemented Lambda. I could spend an entire hour talking about how great it is now and how much we've changed. The Lambda is now really using the official AWS Lambda runtime images, which gives us which facilitates support for all runtimes, which has in the past been slow to update. Basically, when AWS brings out a new runtime image, you immediately get it for free, essentially. And we're using the official Lambda runtime interface emulator, which also gives us much better parity. So Lambda is, there's still some quirks to figure out, but Lambda will be in the next few months like one of our best tested services. The one flip side is that because it's now fully container based, there's no local mode anymore. You need to mount the Docker socket into the LocalStack container. So that's a prerequisite to run Lambda. There was no way around this. And you can find the details on the Discuss post that we shown here. Okay, but those are the main breaking changes that you will run into when you upgrade. Good. So with that, let's jump into the tech demos, and I'll actually take the first slot here, which will be about the cross-service IAM enforcement. So I'll talk about IAM, and if you've ever done anything on AWS, the first thing that you maybe run into that's not working as expected is IAM policies. So IAM policies are, at least for me, like a big pain. And one of the nice things about LocalStack is that you can actually run your application without IAM policies. So if you set up some infrastructure, it'll work without IAM policies. So you can focus on building what matters to you, which is the application and maybe the service integration, and not get stressed by IAM policies. So what I'll show you is sort of a really quick, small demo about how to use how we implemented cross-service IAM enforcement in LocalStack, so you can actually debug your IAM policies. I'm going to switch to my terminal view. And what I'm going to do is I have a demo prepared that uses Terraform. So I'm going to show you the Terraform file real quick. So this is just setting up some basic infrastructure, which sets up an SNS topic and an SQS queue and a topic subscription. So the SQS queue is subscribed to the SNS topic. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to basically deploy this to the real AWS. So I have my AWS account set up here, and I'm connected to a real AWS, and I'm just going to Terraform apply this. Basically, real quick, just to show you that this basically works on AWS. And we can take a look at what Terraform plan is going to do. So it's going to create the topic, which is called platform events. It's going to create an SNS topic subscription between this queue called event queue and the topic. And Terraform, unfortunately, does some. We have this problem on LocalStack that LocalStack actually spins up the resources really, really quickly, like much faster than Terraform can keep up with. There's actually an upstream PR in Terraform that we've submitted to make this faster, to not have Terraform wait for so long. Okay, but anyway, so I have my resources set up. Let's just do a quick check. Let's list the queues. So, okay, I can see the Terraform created the queue correctly. Let's also have a look at the subscriptions. All right, so you can see the list of subscriptions here. We have the event queue subscribed to the topic. And, as any developer, you'd think, okay, this is now set up properly. If you're new to AWS, you just publish something to this topic. So I'm just going to publish some message to this topic using the AWS CLI. Fine, it works. And now I'm expecting to be able to access those messages from the queue, right? Alas, there's nothing there. Okay, so for those of you who are AWS veterans, you probably know why this is the case. We're missing this resource-based policy between SNS and SQS. We're going to show you how you can debug this on LocalStack. So on this window now, I'm going to start LocalStack with our enforce IAM mode. We have a special mode. I said in the beginning that LocalStack does not enforce IAM policies, so you can run your application without IAM policies. We've had an IAM enforcement engine before. It's not done cross-service enforcement yet, and this is what we're implementing, and this is what I'm going to show you. So LocalStack is started. I have the same Terraform file. I'm just going to remove this Terraform state because there's a peculiarity with the state file from Terraform when you switch between AWS and LocalStack. But I can basically take the same Terraform file, use tflocal, which is a small wrapper around Terraform that makes it easy for you to apply the same Terraform file to LocalStack. Now we'll be able, actually, this is a nice side effect also of logging in LocalStack. You can actually see what's going on the server side as Terraform tries to apply the configuration. So you can see it's creating the topic, it's creating the queue, and basically now it's set up everything already. Now all Terraform is doing is polling basically for changes that are in fact already there. It's just making sure that certain things are available that could be related to certain timeouts. Okay, so it's deployed. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to use AWS local to list the queues and to maybe list the subscriptions. You can see it basically looks the same. There's a slight difference in the way that the account IDs are generated. So this is the default account ID, whereas the one that you saw earlier was my real AWS account ID, and the queue URLs look a little bit differently. But other than that, it behaves in the same way. So let's publish a message to the queue, or to the topic, rather. It's AWS SNS publish, and again, I'm going to publish to this topic and just some message. Okay, let's see what's going on in LocalStack. So in the logs with enforce IAM, you can actually see that, okay, there was an access denied exception when SNS was trying to publish or send the message to SQS. So internally, also AWS SNS uses SQS directly, so it calls the SQS API, and this is what we've implemented also in LocalStack. So you get the same behavior as in AWS, and the SNS topic is not allowed to actually publish to the queue. And in the LocalStack log, so our IAM enforcer actually spits out what is missing. So specifically, you can see that the action SQS send message for this particular event queue was denied. So now we basically know what to do, what to fix. We need an SQS policy, an SQS queue policy to fix this. And actually, as this tech-savvy developer that I am, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and ask it to help me. So I'm going to tell it that I have this Terraform file. And I'm going to tell it that LocalStack is complaining about this. I'm going to say running this on LocalStack gives me. I'm going to ask it to add an AWS SQS policy resource to fix this. Okay, let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. So it understands that the topic isn't allowed to write to the queue. So it's adding the SNS topic, the SQS queue correctly from the previous Terraform file, and let's see what it comes up with here. So it creates this queue policy. It has some. Okay, so it's, yes, so you can see that it allows this particular action, the send message, and it actually creates the resource-based policy correctly. So I'm just gonna, actually I can spot a slight mistake here, which is that the principal is not set to SNS, and this will, because I know how how this works on AWS, AWS will actually complain about this. So I have this resource-based policy prepared, but it looks very similar. So you could actually go ahead and try and debug this on LocalStack. But let's grab this, which is the working queue policy. Just a fun little excursion to ChatGPT. I'll post this into or make the change in the Terraform file. Let's see a git diff here. You can see, okay, I added this policy, and I'll just let's tf-local apply the changes. So you can also see that it just seamlessly works with the Terraform update. So again, it's going to take a while because it does all of this state checking with polling and sleep timeouts in between. So it's just gonna take a while. But in fact, like LocalStack already has these resources created. It's just Terraform that's slow here. So what's going to happen is we're going to create this queue policy. Actually, it's an SQS concept, this particular thing, but our IAM policy engine will be able to pick up the queue policy from our SQS provider. Let's try this again. Let's publish a message here, and let's try to receive this from the queue. Whoops, that is actually AWS, not LocalStack. Okay, and now it works. And we could try the same thing with AWS now if you want. So we go back to our AWS window. I'll just gonna delete this state so it's Terraform is not confused. I'm gonna Terraform apply the changes. And you can see that, okay, so it's the Terraform plan now is as I said, because I removed the state, it's thinking that it's going to create all of these resources again, but in fact, it's just going to update them, and it's going to update the queue policy. And maybe you can take my word for it, so we can move on to the next demo. But basically, you'll see that the publishing works now. So in summary, what this gives you is now that we have cross-service IAM enforcement, which is where most of the headaches come from, at least for me, is when things just silently fail. Like this example that I showed you, where the SNS topic publishes into the SQS queue, or should, and you can't receive the messages from there. If you've ever done anything on AWS with IAM, you know how painful it is to debug those kinds of things. Also, when, for example, lambdas aren't triggered from an event bus, from events, some schedule or something, it's very hard to find that out. And with looking into LocalStack, into the logs, you can actually see what's going on and debug those IAM policies. Just for completeness sake, since it's now deployed, I'm just going to use AWS publish. And I'm just going to check SQS to see. Okay, so now it works. So you can see the entire flow. We tried to deploy something. We saw it didn't work. We knew it had something to do with IAM. We were able to debug that in LocalStack. We even asked ChatGPT to generate a solution that we were then able to verify in LocalStack. And then you're pretty confident that you can go to production and deploy this on AWS to do the final check. Okay, so this concludes the demo for the IAM enforcement. One maybe caveat to mention is that not all of the services are implemented yet. We're actively working on this, and we have a framework now in place where we can incrementally add new services to this cross-service IAM enforcement. SNS and SQS currently work. Lambda triggers or Lambda destinations currently work. So if your Lambda is writing its result to an SNS topic, for example, it will work there. And over the next couple of months, you'll see the coverage there increase dramatically. Okay, so with that, I'm happy to hand over to Valdemar, who's going to present big data, the brand new mono container.
Very cool. Thanks so much for sharing. I think this showed really nice. I love to see how ChatGPT is kind of permeating all the development, even in LocalStack, where we're making use of it. And really cool demo to see how you can use something like natural language for debugging your configurations in combination with the IAM policy enforcement that we have in place. So really, really powerful demo. Thanks a lot for sharing. My demo is going to be a bit more dry, but also hopefully interesting for some of you. So essentially what we would like to showcase here is this new big data container that we have put out with V2, and just like a sample application how this works end to end. So just a quick reminder, so when we talk about big data, we're basically referring to essentially Athena, Glue, and EMR, mostly these three services, which are kind of running these SQL queries over S3 data, for example, or Glue allows it to run jobs with PySpark, for example, and so on. In earlier versions of LocalStack, we basically had two containers, so the main container of LocalStack and then a separate big data container, which was running as a sidecar alongside LocalStack. And that just caused some issues with networking. The configuration was a bit tricky and also some instabilities. That's why now with V2, we've kind of packed everything into the single LocalStack main container, which we now call the mono container in that context. And it includes all the utilities like Hive, Presto, and so on. They are generally downloaded on demand, so they're not part of the Pro Docker image, but it's kind of they can be lazily installed. Or we also provide a pre-baked image that has basically all the libraries in there already, which we're going to use for the demo. So what we would like to show is a simple application. It's from our developer hub. Anke will show you a bit more about this afterwards, but just to give a brief overview, it's basically an application defined as a CloudFormation template that uses Athena to define various tables that are defined in the Glue data catalog. And then the data is stored in S3. So we'll actually use a sample from AWS for that, some CSV and JSON files. And then we can use our web application to run queries over this data in S3. So this is what I would like to briefly show you now on my local machine, hoping that the demo gods are going to be with me on this demo. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to start LocalStack, and as you can see here, I'm specifying the image name as with this new special tag 2.00-big-data, which is the image, as I mentioned, that has already the dependencies baked in. We're planning to provide updates of this image every once in a while, so we have the latest changes there as well. All right, so this is now started up, and what we can do now is, so before we actually start the deployment of the application, I just want to take a quick look at the app itself. So we have this defined in our developer hub. Again, Anke will be sharing more details. I'm just going to quickly jump to this particular example here, which points to a GitHub repository, and this is where we actually have the code for this sample defined. So as you can see, this is forked from an official AWS sample that has that queries data over Amazon Athena. And basically, what this use case contains is a bunch of data files for COVID-related analysis. So it has things like patient data, hospital, allocated beds, and so on. Basically, things that were recorded during the pandemic. And we can now deploy this application and run a few example queries to get certain information out of it. Okay, so basically what I can do is I can just literally go in here into the instructions and copy paste the commands one by one. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So the first one here is to create a bucket, copy some files from the local directory into this S3 bucket. So this is the first step. So we've updated the files. We'll take a closer look at them in a second. And then as a second step, we're going to run a CloudFormation create stack command. So this creates basically the CloudFormation stack that is also defined here in this COVID lake stack template. So I'm just going to copy paste this in here. And while it is deploying, we can take a quick look at what the files are actually contained in this project. So I'm moving over to my editor here. And first of all, we can take a look at this CloudFormation stack itself. So what you'll see is it's a fairly relatively large stack here defined as JSON. Here I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can actually read this. So we have a Glue database that has some references to the account ID. the name of the database. And then we have a definition of lots of different tables. So you can see these AWS Glue tables here. And those are basically all the different tables we define that point to the data in the S3 bucket. So for example, if we just take a look at one of those, for example, this one, Allen Institute metadata, and then you can see the different column definitions for this particular table. So we have something like a unique ID for the court data set, and then some SHA hashes, some source strings, and so on. So quite a comprehensive data set that we are kind of deploying here as we go. So this is the CloudFormation template that is currently deploying in the background as we speak, and I believe it's already finished. Yeah, so it's already done. So I'm just switching over here real quick. And then we can also take a look at the data files. So this, for example, is a CSV file that has the vaccine distribution by state. So you can see the jurisdiction at the different sort of US states, allocation, timestamps, number of doses, and so on. So this is the CSV format. It's also available as JSON, which has the same information, but basically just the different encoding there. Okay, and this is the data. And as we mentioned before, we also want to briefly showcase our resource browser. So what I'm going to do, I'll go to this app.localstack.cloud, which maybe some of you already had a chance to sign up here. Get an account, it's free. You can use it, especially also with a pro license. And then I'm going to go to the Athena section here. So and this is now kind of loading the databases that we can already see. So it's maybe a bit small, I have to zoom in a bit. But here we can see that now this COVID database has been loaded alongside the default database as well. Okay, so while this is, so it seems like we should be pretty much ready to go to run some queries. So I'll just switch over again to this view and just run some queries over the hospital beds, for example. So we can select the number of hospital beds. Just going here. So we have a SQL viewer, which is basically also part of this resource browser, and you can then copy paste this in here. And basically what's happening is it's running the query in the background here, and we can already see that the result is displayed here directly in the web UI. So yeah, this I guess looks pretty sort of non-exciting to some of you, but just to remind you what's happening under the scenes is the SQL query gets translated, executed in the query engine, and collects all the files from S3, and then returns the results back to the UI for display here. We can also run a few other queries here. For example, we can do a select count just to see how many entries we have in there. And yeah, just standard SQL, as you can imagine, you can have the full power of basically what Athena provides you here as well. You can describe the table, for example, just to get like the metadata information about which columns it has and so on. Yeah, so I guess relatively straightforward, but it was, I think, worth pointing out the nice integration with the web UI, and also the new mono container. And just if I may just do a quick Docker PS here. So you can see it's just running this one container, which is the LocalStack main container, using this big data image that has everything pre-baked in, and you can just get basically up and running from the second one. Okay, so that was pretty much what I wanted to share. Again, the sample is available on the Developer Hub, which we will also introduce a bit more in a second. And please feel free to reach out if you have any feedback or questions.
That was pretty great. Thanks a lot, Waldemar. I guess my demo is pretty much the next one. I can maybe share my screen to just go over that. I hope it is my time to have demo God's blessings. Yep. Awesome. So my demo is pretty much about cloud-pods-launchpad. I hope most of you exactly know about what cloud-pods are. But for people who don't exactly know what cloud-pods is, then cloud-pods is our next generation state management tool that basically allows you to save, push, pull, restore all of your local AWS resources on the fly. So before cloud-pods, we had the persistence mechanism. If you wanted to enable the persistence mechanism, all that you needed to do was set up a config variable, which is persistence is equal to 1. And with that said, with all of the restarts of your LocalStack instance, you can pretty much restore all the state of your AWS resources. Now, obviously, as Gerda might have outlined, we wanted to do something more. We wanted to make sure that we can save this state, we can version them, we can share it with our team members so that even they can restore it on your local machine. And it is such a powerful thing if you want to create reproducible applications, you want to debug applications together, or maybe if you want to pre-seed your CI environments on the fly. So with that said, we had the CloudPods feature. If you want to check out CloudPods, you can simply navigate to our documentation. CloudPods is available for our community and our pro users, so you can easily get started with them. Overall, there is a slight difference in the CLI experience, but at best, you can save your entire AWS infrastructure state in a CloudPod. You can push it to a Git repository. You can maybe save it on the LocalStack web application. And through that, you can restore your CloudPods by just saying like LocalStack pod pull. And with that, you will have your entire state created on your local machine. So my demo won't exactly be about CloudPods. It would be about the cloud-pods-launchpad, which has been created by a few of our engineers who can, which is basically making sure that you can quickly share and inject CloudPods by just sharing a public link. So if you want to get started with the CloudPods launchpad, it is completely available for everyone out there. So even for community and pro users. And all that you need to do is to basically go to app.localstack.cloud/launchpad. And you will basically get to see this user interface where you can basically generate a link for your CloudPod. So as I mentioned before, if you want to use CloudPods, you can either save it inside your LocalStack web application. So if I navigate to my web application right here, you will get to see that I have a CloudPods view. And this is where the pro users and the team users can basically save their CloudPods. You can also choose to set your CloudPods visibility to public, which would mean that anyone can basically pull your CloudPod without having to be part of your organization. Apart from this, you can also save your CloudPod inside a Git repository. So you can maybe have a CI workflow that creates a CloudPod with every release. And you can use this as a way to basically inject the CloudPod into your running LocalStack instance, and you can get to try that out, which is basically what I'm going to show today. So with Anka's Developer Hub, we introduce a pretty new application, which is the serverless image resizer. This application was built by Thomas for one of the meetups that he was presenting at. And the basic premise of this application is pretty simple. It provides a complete web UI where we can basically resize the image in a serverless way. So we have a simplistic front-end UI built using HTML and JavaScript. We are basically uploading the images, and that triggers a Lambda function that runs the image resizing. And you also have SES where you can get to see some failed runs over there so that you can verify if your application is working properly or not. So we are using a bunch of AWS features over here. We are using S3 buckets. We are using Lambda function URLs. We are using SNS, SES, and you also get to see this nice visual web application. With LocalStack, if you want to set up this whole application on your local machine, you will have to manually go through all of these steps. You have to set up PyEn, you have to create the buckets, you have to put the bucket name, you have to create the Lambdas, and there are so many things overall out here. But with CloudPods, you don't have to do a single thing over here. All that you need to do is to click upon this one simple batch that we have available right here. And this will simply start up the CloudPods launchpad for you. So since my LocalStack instance is not running right now, what I can basically do is I can jump to my terminal and I can say let's get started with LocalStack. I'll keep this terminal open so that you can get to see all of the requests that are coming in. But if I just happen to refresh this launchpad, I guess it's taking some time right here. Yep. You can see over here that LocalStack is up and running. It is specifying the version of LocalStack that I have present on my local machine. Previously with CloudPods, there was a slight discrepancy where the CloudPods that you create with a certain LocalStack version won't work with a LocalStack version that is different from the one where the original CloudPod has been created. This has been completely fixed right now, so you can easily share your CloudPods across multiple different LocalStack versions. So we have the serverless image resizer CloudPod. You can get to see all of the services that has been used to basically build this CloudPod. And all that you need to do is to set up this whole application on your local machine is to click upon this inject button. So as soon as it starts injecting the pod, you can basically go to your terminal and you can get to see all of the API responses firing up. And you can then get to see that the pod has been successfully injected and you are basically ready to get started with the whole application. So I previously had this one simple URL, which you can basically use. And as soon as I click upon that, you will get to see that the function URLs for the pre-sign lambda and the list lambda functions are already pre-filled. And all that I need to do is to click upon this form where I can upload a picture that I want to resize. I can click on upload and I can navigate to the LocalStack web application where I can get to access the S3 resource browser. And over there, I can get to see my resized image as well. So I can click on this upload, like choose a file. I have a simple parrot picture that I want to use. And I can just click on upload. So if you go back on the terminal, you will get to see that our Lambda function has been triggered once again. And the whole resize process is pretty successful. So I can again go back to the web application that I had over here. I can go to the resources. I can click upon S3. And I can get to the LocalStack thumbnails app resize, which is the S3 bucket that we originally restored from the CloudPod, where all of the resized pictures are basically present. And over here, you can get to see the parrot picture. I have the name wrong, but here we have the official resized picture that we wanted to create. The good thing with LocalStack is that you can actually also get to use the Stack Insights. Stack Insights is a feature that we basically provide to check out your AWS API telemetry. So you can get to see like which of your API calls basically were successful, which one of them were errored out, what AWS service did you use, and what were the particular API calls that had a particular error. So you can easily use this to debug your AWS infrastructure if you're creating it using any sort of an integration like AWS CLI, Terraform, Pulumi, CDK, or anything of that sort. If you want to create your own cloud pod and you want to like launch it via Launchpad, all that you need to do is to add a public URL to your pod over here. So in this case, Thomas created a CI action that creates a cloud pod with every release of the application that we are doing. So you can basically right click on this. You can navigate to this generate your link. And all that you need to do is to click upon this generate link, and that's gonna generate a public URL for you. And you will also have like a README badge, which you can simply copy to your GitHub repository so that people can just click on that and they can easily inject your AWS infrastructure onto their local machine. And it is kind of powerful because now you don't need to instruct them that, hey, you have to set up these many things, you have to create these many resources. All that you need to do is to just click upon this one markdown badge, and your application is completely set up on your local machine, which kind of makes the debugging part really, really easy for you. With that said, this was the cloud-pods launchpad, and this is the architecture that we were trying to build. All of the repositories, all of the demos that we have shown over here is pretty much public, so please check them out, and please get started with them if you're really excited about them. And with that said, I'll pass over the baton to Anka, who will be talking a bit about community and resources before I take up the final few slides over here. So we are running short on time, but we at least have a few minutes that we can take into account.
Can I get the developer hub slide, please?
Sure. I'll share my screen.
Yes, this is the part that you've all been waiting for. I got so many mentions, so I'll try to keep this short because you've seen little previews. Everybody has spoken about the developer hub. I'll give you a short introduction. If I were to use a few words, I would just call it a resource platform for developers. With that being said, we designed it with the needs of the developers in mind, meaning that we want people to have a place where they could go to find resources to learn and help them solve their problems. So I'm going to share my screen now and show you around. Sorry. I hope you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Right, so this is our LocalStack landing page. If you go to the documentation section here, you will find the developer hub in the left-hand side section. You'll have an overview. You can see that we moved the tutorials here because we thought it made a lot more sense for developers to have all the resources in one place and not have a million tabs open. We also linked the community tutorials, so everything is in one place. And I think the most exciting part of this is the application section. You've probably heard by now that these are either AWS samples from their official sample repository, or we built them from scratch ourselves. We wanted to go beyond the basic hello world with these samples. So having in mind the problem-solving situation, whether it's getting started quickly with LocalStack or finding some sample that is similar to the application that you build in the real world, we hope you can find this helpful. You can also get inspiration from these sample applications by seeing how LocalStack integrates with different workflows. Another one of our goals was to share tips and tricks with the community, because not all the things work out of the box. Sometimes you need an extra configuration or some small thing that's missing. So again, we hope this will be useful for you. And another one of our ambitions for the sample applications was to, so to say, narrow the gap between the AWS services and LocalStack by showcasing how the parity gets better and better over time until you don't see the difference anymore. So we will continue to improve these applications based on your feedback, and we will try to help our community more through these resources. A quick question that I want to ask all the participants is, what learning medium fits your needs best? Whether it's video tutorials, blog posts, examples versus documentation, what would you like to see more of in the Developer Hub? And you could use the chat to maybe share some ideas with us. And I'll quickly show you one of the sample applications. You will be redirected to a GitHub repository. You will have all the important highlights right there in the beginning, along with an introduction to the application, what services it's using, what is the purpose of the application, along with an architecture diagram, which for me personally is very important because these are concepts that are hard to grasp sometimes. So it's really nice to have. We also have all the resources that are being used here, along with prerequisites and how to install them and where to go to get them. Obviously, you will have instructions on how to create the infrastructure, how to build the sample application, deploy it, and most importantly, how to test it. Of course, not all applications will have services that need visualizing your data, but of course you can also use the web app of LocalStack to do so. We've also included a cloud-pods section. Most of the applications have that, and GitHub Actions, and of course, further reading material if you're interested in that. And with that, I hope you got a good overview of the Developer Hub, and I hope I convinced you to go out there and check it out. Thank you, and back to you, Harsh.
Thank you, Anka, for quite a general introduction to the Developer Hub, and thanks for all the hard work on that part. With that said, we are also building some really awesome video content. Kudos to Nancy, which you might be able to find on our YouTube channel that we are trying to build out. So for everyone who is looking to have some, who's trying to take a look at some sample applications, repositories, use cases with some particular video content, please keep an eye on our LocalStack YouTube channel. And we'll be more than happy to take all of your case studies, take all of your use cases into account so that we can build some video content around that as well. You can check out some of the existing videos, which is mostly the past community events and some new videos where we try to introduce some new feature toolings and some new application samples. And if you have got any feedback for us, please feel free to reach out to us directly on the community Slack, and we'll be more than happy to build specific content around that. With that said, it has been quite an incredible year for our community as well, because we have seen a phenomenal contributor growth. And almost back in October 2022, we also had the Hacktoberfest meetup where we got to see a lot many new contributors coming to LocalStack and trying to contribute to our core cloud emulator, our documentation, our sample applications, and more of that. So thanks everyone who has made LocalStack possible, who has made our recent release possible. And thanks for putting your faith in us and trying to contribute to the open source journey itself. We're almost nearing 500 contributors. We still need some of your support to basically hit the 500 contributors mark. And maybe by the next release, we can increase this numbers manifold. Maybe that's an overstatement, but I guess you got the sentiment. And yes, we have this new slide where we just thank every one of you. So thank you once again for all of your contributions to LocalStack. Unfortunately, we have not been able to accommodate some of the crucial no-code contribution to our documentation, our support samples, our sample applications, and more of that. So please take this slide as a gesture to thank all of you for all of your contributions, not just code contribution, but all of the no-code contribution that you did, and to make LocalStack a truly incredible local cloud development platform. So what is next coming up for the LocalStack community? So we have a few important announcements, but we are still not able to provide more details onto that. So please wait for a few more months before we release our official announcements on that. So I'm just gonna tease you a bit onto this part. So LocalStack is now part of the GitHub Octernships. If you're not familiar with what Octernships are, then it is basically a platform that GitHub is providing where companies can connect with student developers who can get to contribute to LocalStack. So if you're a student right now who is looking to get some real world experience, please keep an eye on GitHub Octernships, and you might be able to work with the LocalStack team on our core cloud emulation platform, on our web application, or on our documentation and sample applications completely in the near future itself. Apart from this, our development team has been kind of trying to build some new opportunities for community advocates where they can be supported while they're trying to create some LocalStack specific content. So if you're someone who is creating a lot of content around AWS or LocalStack in general, please get in touch with us either by the official email ID or by the community Slack. And we'll be more than happy to work with you to roll out more LocalStack specific content out in the community over there. So if you want to get in touch with us, please join us on our Slack community channel. And there is a specific contributors channel. So you can basically join that and you can introduce yourself and our team can basically pick up from there. And as Anka mentioned, we want to understand about what are some of the AWS services are you using, what are some of the specific AWS APIs or some of the use cases that you're trying to build into, and what new applications that you might want to take a look at. So to help us basically in this endeavor, we have a public questionnaire. And it would be great if you can fill this out so that we can immediately get onto that part. We can get to see all of the use cases, all of the questions, all of the concerns that you might have, and we can simply start building onto that itself. And the best part is that we are providing some amazing swags onto here. So please feel free to fill out this questionnaire. It's just 3 questions. It will just take less than a minute of your time. And if you want some swags, please fill out your personal details as well, and my team might be able to reach out to you pretty soon enough. And yes, that's pretty much it. So for our closing note, I guess I can invite Waldemar in to share about what are the things that will be coming up for LocalStack in the near future. So Waldemar, would you like to take up this section?
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, because I think we've been over time already and it's been a great session. So there's lots of things that we have in the pipeline. So starting from an IDE plugin for better debugging support, specifically for Lambdas, because that's one of the feedbacks that we got, having even closer tight cycles for the inner dev loop and really having IDE integrations for your favorite IDEs. We're further enhancing the parity and performance of all the services. So that's kind of an ongoing work stream, but we really take this very seriously. And our aim is to have essentially almost 100% parity with the real cloud providers. We're working on the LocalStack CLI experience, so making that decoupling it a bit from Python and really having some self-contained binaries, getting you started from sort of the first second you download the CLI, and just removing some of the barriers that may currently exist. We're gonna innovate on the inter-service IAM policies that Thomas mentioned. I think there's been some great feedback in the chat also that we're gonna incorporate, and that's an ongoing work stream. And then just also continue, working on integration. So there's lots of innovation happening also in other startups, in the infrastructure as code world, and just making sure that we really fit into sort of the ecosystem of your and your landscape of how you're developing your applications throughout the CI pipeline, from local to CI to the real environment. So with that said, I think there's lots more exciting updates to come in the upcoming weeks and months. And Harsh, any final closing words from your side?
I guess everything simply went quite good. So thanks a lot, everyone, for participating in this community event. In the future community events, we will be coming up with some more exciting talks, so please stay tuned. Join our meetup community out there. And if you want to work with us, please reach out to us on the community Slack, and we can try some avenues to support your work and basically make sure that we are trying to help our people with a pretty stable local cloud development platform that simply works out of the box. With that said, we will have our final Q&A right now. Since we are almost exceeding quite much time right now, we'll just go over all of the questions really quick. So yeah, we have all of these questions right here. So Paul has been asking, like, are we going to share the presentation slide? So yes, Paul, we are going to put this on the community Slack on the general channel itself, and you can pick up on the slide deck over there. We are also going to link the slide deck to our YouTube video as well, the one that we put once this meetup gets over. Are we going to cover the breaking changes? I guess we have covered the breaking changes. I guess Thomas briefly went over it. If you want to go into more details, we have a discuss post that you can simply use to migrate your existing local stack setup to V2. I guess that should just help out. If you're encountering any issues, please feel free to reach out to us on the help channel on the LocalStack community, or feel free to create a pro support ticket for us. There has been some serious limitations with support for CloudFormation in V1. Has the support improved in V2? Thomas, Waldemar?
Sure, I can maybe take this one. So we're actively working on CloudFormation. We're spending significant amount of resources now on improving CloudFormation. It's sort of our next big project. So for V2, there are no specific improvements. There's been improvements over the entire quarter, just smaller things, but now we're really thinking things from the ground up. So you will see significant improvement in CloudFormation over the next months. So CloudFormation we have a big commitment to making CloudFormation work. Also, different stack operations, update and delete, at least for the core services, that works out of the box. Better debugging and logging support and things like that. So stay tuned on that one. There's more to come.
Looking forward to V2. I'm currently advocating LocalStack usage for the local development server, hoping to get LocalStack integrated. That's pretty great, Maher. And please feel free to reach out to us if you need some more support onto that part. Would you recommend putting LocalStack in a CI/CD pipeline? If yes, where would you put it? Waldemar, Thomas, would you like to take it up?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely one of our core use cases. We would not see it as a replacement for a staging environment. So we still recommend, having some pre-production environment that is very close to production. But certainly, and we do this ourselves, we run all our integration tests, even for our platform in LocalStack. Certainly giving you these repeatable environments that are ephemeral, right? So you don't have to care about the resources. So absolutely. And please reach out to us if you have any specific questions around integration for CI.
I've also linked the public documentation that we have, which can basically get you started with integrating LocalStack to most of the popular public CI providers like GitHub Actions, Travis, Circle. So please feel free to go through those docs as well. Is the repo that Waldemar's demoing publicly available? Yes, it is publicly available. You can feel free to use the repository that is already on the chat. And we have more Developer Hub sample applications present on the documentation, and we have more coming up, so stay tuned. Regards to the last question, we don't exactly need to use the cloud version to just use S3. What exactly I was trying to demonstrate was the resource browser. So resource browser tries to mimic and tries to provide a near experience to the AWS console. It's not a fully replacement because AWS console simply has got a lot of features. So if you want to use S3, or if you want to use most of the popular AWS services, like we have got Lambda, we have got SNS, we have got SQS, most of them are available with the publicly available and open source LocalStack Community Edition. So please feel free to take it for a run through that itself. And if you want some more niche use cases like ECS, EKS, AppSync, and more of that, in that case, you can maybe try looking into our Pro or our Team subscription. Through that, you will also be able to access the LocalStack web application, which will have all the resource browsers. If you are not using...
Sorry, if I may add something to this, because I think there's some confusion that sometimes arises when we show the resource browser. So when you use the resource browser, the services aren't in the cloud or with us or anything. The resource browser is just accessing your local instance. So there's no cloud involved. When you run LocalStack and you go to the resource browser, everything's stored on your machine. We store nothing of your AWS resources or anything.
Yep. So it is completely ephemeral. You stop LocalStack instance and everything just simply vanishes off. So I guess that answers the question. And with that said, I guess we can bring this community event to an end. So thanks everyone for participating in and for jumping onto this call. If you have any more questions, any more things, any more feedback that you want to share with us, please reach out to us on the Slack channels, and we'll be more than happy to work with you on any of the particular use cases that you might have. And with that said, have a great rest of the week, everyone. And yep, see you in the next event. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for